Beep, 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 beep. Hello, how are we doing, all right? Trans pride. What? Right, okay, so we had the edifying spectacle of trans pride this weekend. Last weekend, or whatever it was, right? Trans pride. Right, okay. And it turned out to be as unedifying as we expected it to be. What a surprise. Quel dommage. So, what's happened? Well, looks to me like violence directed at women is currently the cause of the day. Let's, what should we support today? How about being violent to women? Let's support that. So I've got an article here. Oh, become a warrior teacher, will you? It's August, so we're heading there fast. Come and look at my Twitter profile thing and go and write in why you want to be one and come and be one with the rest of us. It's great fun. You'll enjoy it. Right, buy me a coffee if you can. That'd be really great. Buy me a coffee would be very helpful. Or subscribe to my Substack, which is also helpful. And subscribe to this and share it. We don't share and retweet enough, etc. So, well, I've got an article from The Telegraph about what happened at Trans Pride. Now, we recently had the unedifying spectacle of the bloke from the Terence Higgins Trust calling for, I don't know what he was calling for, but gay conversion therapy, basically, right? You won't get HIV if we take your cock and balls off. Do you remember? Right, so we had that. Now we got this. It's just surreal. It's like some bizarre world that we've drifted into. We've woken up in some hellhole. So this is one from the Telegraph about Trans Pride. Trans Pride defends activist who told crowd to punch TERFs in the face. In the effing face. Are we surprised? Why are we surprised anymore? Sarah Jane Baker, who served 30 years for kidnapping and attempted murder, addressed attendees at the march on Saturday. So let's first of all, as you were, calm down. Let's first of all recognise that Pride, Trans Pride, whoever runs this shit show, Trans Pride, right, centred this person by giving them a stage on which to rant their hate. That's the first thing, right? That's the first thing. What? Okay. Sarah Jane Baker, London Trans Pride have defended you. Right, so London Trans Pride has defended a convicted kidnapper who called for protesters to punch women in the face, yep. Sarah Jane Baker, a trans activist who campaigns on behalf of trans prisoners, addressed attendees at the march on Saturday. Who gave him the megaphone and who gave him the stage? She, it says here, I'm not doing it, all right? He was released from prison 3 years ago after serving 30 years for the kidnapping and attempted murder of his stepmother's brother and for attempting to kill another prisoner while incarcerated. Seems like a nice bloke, right? Apparently he cut off his own testicles and ate them, according to himself. What does it take to deal with these people? At the march on Saturday, Baker told a cheering crowd, I was going to come here and be really fluffy, be really nice and be really lovely, and queer and gay and laugh. But if you see a TERF, punch them in the effing face. What's this got to do with LGB? Nothing. Nothing. Nothing at all. And there have been gay people there who were in the crowd. And by the way, the crowd cheered. Hooray for punching TERFs in the face. Hooray for violence against women. Hooray! All these people stood there cheering. Gay men in the crowd, I imagine. Lesbians in the crowd, I imagine. Straight people in the crowd. So-called allies. Punch them in the effing face. Hooray! That's what they said. TERF is an abbreviation for Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminist. Personally, I like to think TERF stands for Tired of Explaining Reality to Effing Wits, right? I think there are people who believe that a trans woman's gender identity is illegitimate. I don't believe in gender identity, but I obviously can't be a TERF. I'm a turd, as I've said before. I'm a trans exclusionary radical daddy. I'm a turd. Okay. The London Trans Pride March has been running since 2018 and this year was supported by Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London. He tweeted on Saturday, wishing everyone at London's Trans Pride today a joyful, safe and empowering day. I mean, it just makes you want to vomit. He's like some, a sort of thing, corporate creature you stick in a corner and if you prod it gently, it gives you a platitude, Have you poked Khan today? Go and give him a poke, see what you get. Poke. Bring your whole self to work. It's true, isn't it? It's true, isn't it? Poke. This is a safe space. Poke, power and oppression everywhere. It's never been more, he says, important to support trans people who are being stigmatised and placed at the heart of a toxic culture war. As your mayor, I will always be on your side. Okay, all right then, what against women? Khan, you monster. When asked if Mr. Khan supported Baker's comments, a spokesman said, the mayor is a proud LGBTQI plus hands, knees and bumps the daisy ally and has been clear in his support for the trans community. He is also clear that violence is never acceptable. All right, which is it then, Khan? Khan! The London Trans Pride speakers demonstrated at Wellington Arch in London's Hyde Park Corner on July the 8th. There were 10 scheduled speakers, of which Baker was not one, organisers said. She instead took to the stage during the open mic portion of the event. Well, yeah. It's not a she, it's a he. However, organisers said that while it does not condone violence, many speakers at the event hold a lot of rage, which they have the right to express through words. You don't have the right to threaten people. You don't have the right to incite the crowd to violence. You don't have a right to incite violence. You don't. Imagine if I stood up and said it. Punch a tranny in the face. You know? Imagine if I said that. However, organisers said that while it does not condone violence, people have rage. A London Trans Pride spokesman said, Sarah and many others in our community hold a lot of rage. Again, all about rage. We do not condone violence. We do not back a call to arms for violence of any kind. But yet you did. But yet it's there. We do condone righteous anger and the right to free speech that was expressed yesterday. That wasn't free speech. It wasn't free speech. They used a slur. That's what he did. He said something and he used a slur when he said it. Right? That's what he did. Same as I would have done if I'd said what I said earlier. Karen Vardy, founder of Conservatives for Women, said that while Baker was a history of serious violence and was freely inciting others to commit violence against women in full view and hearing of police officers, women are told we are bigots if we express concerns about sharing spaces where we are undressed or vulnerable with trans women. We look forward to men. It's just men. We look forward to hearing condemnation of this from the Mayor of London and the Met Police, who have been influenced by lobby groups like Stonewall to insist there is no debate to be had over so-called trans rights. I'm glad to say that on the back of that, actually, there's a Transpositions coming up, which is a launch of a book which is taking place in Manchester with Sarah of the Philomel. So people are going to be going along to speak to that and to listen to the stories and how people, got involved in the fight. And then the book is being launched on that date. And Sarah tweeted from the train, I think it was yesterday or the day before, that she was almost brought to tears by the fact that Greater Manchester Police, I am proud to say, have taken very seriously the threats made by this man on the stage at so-called Trans Pride, and that they're going to be looking into it and they're going to be reporting him to his probation officer. So I'm looking forward to Sarah Jane Baker going back to where he belongs, and him being dealt with in the way he should be dealt with in any civilised society, which is a rancorous call to violence merchant. And so that hopefully will happen. Meanwhile, up here, we had Sparkle, which is Sparkle Weekend, which is the trans weekend. And I understand everybody had a great time, but it did rain heavily. It does that up here. It did rain heavily. And we have yet to see many of the photographs from what was, I imagine, a peculiar event, populated as it was by the collective noun of trans. I wonder how many people were actually there because they suffer the most terrible gender dysphoria, or because they stood in the street and took a photograph saying they felt aroused at Sparkle. Just go and look on Twitter. Go and have a look, folks. See for yourself. This is the kind of behaviour that we are seeing more and more from trans activists. There is something terribly wrong. And there was an article that came out very, very recently. I mean, as in, I think in the last few hours, that I will add to this, which is the most extraordinary, really. And it's just confirmed everything that we've all been saying for so long. So I'm going to move on to that next, because I think it ties in with this very nicely. This behaviour by this individual man. Again, from the Telegraph, link to both articles are in the Dubras. Male sex offenders faking trans identities to move to women's prisons. This is an extraordinary piece of work, this article, in which a man pretending to be a woman tries to differentiate himself from a man pretending to be a woman. It's the most extraordinary thing. Evidence unearthed by the Prisoner's newspaper, Inside Time apparently, it's Prisoner's newspaper, found inmates were pretending to change gender to access the female estate. Bloody hell. Gosh, Imagine my surprise. I'm so surprised I can't speak. Jailed male sex offenders are faking transgender identities in an effort to move to women-only prisons. Now, this is interesting. Research backed by the Ministry of Justice suggests the moves were disclosed in interviews with prisoners who had already transitioned and felt the fakers were a threat to their reputation. So they've asked the men who are pretending to be women, which of the other men are pretending to be women? Don't. What? So they're going to split them now. We're going for it now, right? That one. What do you reckon of that? Watch what he does. Watch. You know, it's like a scene in one of those films, like Superman years ago. In Superman, there was a scene like this. Where else have we seen this? X-Men have done it, you know, where there's two people who are the same people, and the individual in the scrap has to decide and shoot the baddie, right? This is where we're finding ourselves. It's like, it's not me, it's him. No, it's not me, it's him. And they're both the same person. And then they shoot and the baddie dies. And you go, how did you know? And it was like, oh, it was in your eyes. This is the same thing. It's the same thing, right? Nut jobs. Jailed male sex offenders faking it, right? The moves were disclosed. Inmates who pretended to be transitioning see it as a way to lower their risk. Wow. Adopt a trans identity, which is obviously just pretending you're something you're not, and automatically your risk towards others goes down. What? It's everything the women have been saying. Everything the women have been saying. It also allows them to secure a place in the female prison estate, according to evidence unearthed by Inside Time, the prison's newspaper. I'm going to go with what they say, because they must know something. Last year, there were 168 legally male trans women. There's no such thing as legally male. Well, there certainly shouldn't be. Male trans women prisoners. Sorry, I've got it wrong. There were 168 legally male trans women prisoners, meaning they're male, right? I haven't got it wrong that there shouldn't be legally male. So there were 168 men pretending to be women in England and Wales prisons. Only 6 were in women. So 6 of these men were in women's prisons, with the remainder in men's. A further 11 prisoners had legally switched gender by obtaining gender recognition services. So that's 168 plus 11 is 179. 179 people pretending to be women in prison in order to lower their risk and get around safeguarding and be sent to the female estate. Is it me or is that powder keg waiting to happen? The figures show that men jailed for sex offences are twice as likely to identify as trans women than men jailed for other types of offences. Is that true? Or is it the other way around? That those that take on a gender identity are more likely to be sex offenders? That those believe in gender identity are more likely to be sex offenders? Or are they actually LARPing and pretending to be the so-called real trans woman? There's no such thing, they're just men. So, in other words, the figure shows that men jailed for sex offences are twice as likely to identify as trans women, than men jailed for other types of offences. So, in other words, men who lie about who they are, right, or who believe in a nonsense gender fairy, right, are more likely to be sex offenders. Is that what that says? You tell me, I'm not sure. The MOJ has introduced tougher rules following the controversy in Scotland over the decision to send Isla Bryson, a transgender convict. No, Isla Bryson was just a rapist, okay, who had a trans identity, who said, I'm a trans woman. Yeah. He was found guilty of raping 2 women. That's how female he was. Bastard. Before transitioning to an all-female prison. You know. I love it. The MOJ has introduced tougher rules. I'll give you a tough rule. No men in women's prisons. Get it? No women in men's prisons. Do you get it? That's how tough the rule needs to be, MOJ. Make a damn decision. The new rules mean that transgender women jailed for violence or sexual assault are no longer able to be held in mainstream women's prisons. I don't know what that means. Held in mainstream women's prisons. What does that mean? Does that mean that they'll get a separate room on their own? In which case you're treating them like a priestly class as opposed to what they should be treated as, which is like the other men in the prison. It might be that our prison system is disgusting and dire and vile anyway, as far as I know, right? In which case it needs looking at, right? But that doesn't mean that you put men in women's prisons on the estate at all. They go in with the men. They are not a priestly class. They don't get to be treated differently because of their belief system, other than the fact that they get food and they can pray on a certain day. The study was carried out by Sarah Firth, a forensic psychologist with the prison service. There was a theme in the findings related to participants having to prove their authenticity to others, but also questioning how genuine or fake other transgender prisoners were, she said. But they're all fake. They're all pretending to be something they're not. This is insane. Have we reached peak insanity? They're all pretending to be something they're not. There is no such thing as gender identity unless you believe in a gendered soul. In which case, God gets it wrong. Is it me or is this utterly insane? Participants described how the fakers were a threat both to the reputation of prisoners who were transitioning gender, but also a threat to the limited resources that were available to them in custody. What? Fakers were a threat? Which ones? How do you tell the difference? Is there like a test? Is it like you sort of moisten the forehead, stick something on it, and it comes off, and you go, no, this was real. This needs to stop. The finding on fakers echoes a letter in July's issue of Inside Time from a serving trans man in prisoner at HMP Dartmoor. So he wrote, sadly, there are people who use being transgender as a tool. Some sex offenders used to say that they were transgender as they believed it lowered risk and made them exempt from courses, and also in the hope that they would be placed in the female estate. It's just unfortunate that people jump on the transgender bandwagon for personal gain. It makes genuine people look good. You can't be a genuine person if you pretend to be something you're not, kid. This idea of true trans coming through, isn't it? No such thing. It's all mental illness or distress, fetishism or paraphilia, confused kids, LARPing middle classers. That's it. That's your barrel. That's your trans collective noun. Those interviews said they'd felt gender dysphoria from a young age. This is what we're seeing now, is this idea that there always was a gender dysphoria from a young age. You know as well as I do, I covered an article the other day in which John Hopkins said we need to stop this and stop it now, and that was in 2015, right? What they're saying is that despite the fact that we now know that lots of this is all nonsense, there seems to be this essence of, well, when they were very young, they knew. They're gay. 100% of the Dutch model was gay, and what they're saying is here, actually there is a portion that do need this conversion therapy to turn them from being uncomfortable gay children into comfortable heterosexual simulacrums. No. You don't get to convert gay people by surgery. No matter how comfortable it makes them feel. We have to work with them from a psychological point of view. We do not damage gay people in this way. It's called conversion therapy. He said that those interviewed said they'd felt gender dysphoria from a young age and had hidden their true selves for years before coming to prison. Their true selves, you're just gay. Some 100% Dutch study. Some have never met another transgender person before coming into custody and said that meeting others had prompted them to think about their own identity. There you go. There's the social one. There's the social contagion. They felt happier since transitioning and had more sense of purpose, which they claimed would make them less likely to reoffend. I put on some lipstick and a dress and it gave me more sense of purpose. It's just cobblers, isn't it? End it. End it all. Most denied that being transgender increased their risk of committing sexual offences, despite the fact that we know that the vast majority of people that are in prison who are trans are in there for sex offences. Go figure. Although one participant said that jealousy of a female partner's femininity was a factor in motivating their sexual offence. You allow this stuff, this nonsense to take precedent, this is what you get. This is what you get. For others, suppressing their true gender identity over many years had led to problems with substance misuse, relationship difficulties, or hypermasculinity. Mr. Frith's study was commissioned internally by the prison service. So what they're saying is that men who are hypermasculine can be forgiven all if they just turn around and say that they're women. And they use that hypermasculinity in a bad way. It's all crackers, it's all bonkers, and it all needs to stop. Right, we don't need an article from the Telegraph where men pretending to be women try to describe men pretending to be women as if they're some kind of different thing. They're not, they're the same. I don't care what the reasons are. The reasons are immaterial. All right? You cannot expect to be able to believe someone who is disingenuous about who they are when they tell you something and then expect you to take it to be the truth. Because if they'll lie about their very essence and their very body and who they are, they will lie about anything. That's my take. It ends everywhere, at every level, and it ends as soon as possible before we do more untold damage to individuals. Despite the fact that we've known since the early days of this ridiculous medical experiment it didn't work and was confirmed in 2015 that it wasn't just not working, it was causing untold damage to people. Go well, all right? Prisons. See you later.